How can we empower underwriters and other risk decision makers to make more informed decisions? My name is Shaheen Razzaq and I work here at RMS. For those that don't know, RMS is the world's leading catastrophe modeling and analytics company. We've been serving the insurance industry for over 30 years and support over 400 institutions. Traditionally, our focus has been on portfolio management analytics, but today I want to talk to you about a new product we've just launched that provides risk decision makers with a holistic view of risk, all at their fingertips. SiteIQ is a new tool aimed at providing access to RMS sites in an easy and intuitive application, directly at the point of underwriting. We have built a tool that goes beyond rudimentary hazard information, like many of the tools available today, but rather provide a set of in-depth and rich risk analytics. There are a number of aspects we feel make SiteIQ different to the other hazard tools out there in the market. Although it provides basic hazard information, SiteIQ provides something different, risk scores, which have been derived running our probabilistic models, the ones used by some of the largest carriers in the world to manage their portfolios. The scores take into consideration both hazard and vulnerability and are available for 3 different return periods. Loss costs give users what we call a technical premium, or AAL if you like. It distills all the sources of model risk, hazard, vulnerability, and contract terms to give you a single dollar amount. We can also take into consideration peril-specific deductibles. Underwriters have told us that although understanding risk to CAT is a key input for their assessment, they want to understand other risks to the locations that they're reviewing. SiteIQ is a platform that can support any third-party data. Whether you're interested in crime scores or distance to fire hydrant, SiteIQ can be integrated with third-party data assets to deliver this to you in one single application. Also, we take care of it through a single contract. You don't need to sign multiple different contracts with multiple different providers. Just tell us what you need, we can source it and deliver it through SiteIQ for you. Everything in the solution is customizable, so it shows your risk appetite. Want to stay away from locations with high flood scores? Then configure your system to show your underwriters that they should be cautious about underwriting this particular location. Finally, we won't be able to show off all the data we have underneath the hood. So this is a very busy graphic that shows you all the data we have access to through SiteIQ, as well as a rich pipeline of data being added. We don't believe in making you buy data piecemeal. So when you license SiteIQ, you have access to our entire data set for no additional charge. That includes high-resolution data such as US flood and US wildfire. Even though you don't license any other applications from RMS or even license the probabilistic models, you have access to all this data within the app. So let's get into the demo to show off some of these capabilities. Our first demo will be around entering a single location to access those risk insights that we've just talked about. So let's log into SiteIQ. It's a cloud-based app that requires no infrastructure for you to worry about. Let's enter a single location, the address of our headquarters in Silicon Valley, California. Google's going to help us complete the address, and then the RMS geocoder will geocode it. And then within a second, we've got the results back. You can see that we've put a pin on the map. But let's change this view to a satellite view so we can see what the surrounding area looks like. We can also use Google Street View to look at the location. The geocoders actually put us right in the middle of the car park. So let's move it to the right location. You see, as we move the pin, it recalculates the scores accordingly within a second or two. It's great that we can see the location we're interested in, but how close is it to the other locations I've underwritten or quoted, or in fact been underwritten or quoted by my colleagues? Well, within SiteIQ, we can integrate your exposure system of record and pull all the locations into the app that are within 5 miles of this location and see the corresponding data. Now let's move to the more important part of the screen, which is the left-hand side. You can see straight away we've got a very high earthquake score. We also have third-party cards showing things like climate risk, as well as a wealth of other peril scores. You're building a holistic picture of risk for this location. You can also see hazard scores and information about what those scores mean. It's actually the same hazard information that goes into building our probabilistic models. I also showed you an overview of your portfolio, but how about some more context? How about understanding how much TIV we have in the surrounding areas from those other locations we've already underwritten? How about which one's the most closest to the location we're looking at? You can configure the system to warn the underwriters when they should worry about these metrics by color coding them red and green. Clicking on this details button will show us more detail about the location, such as which cresta zone it's in. You can note that we haven't populated primary characteristics. We're going to do that in a few minutes. But before we leave this screen, I wanted to show you how granular the data is within the product. If you look at the hazard tab, you'll see that there are no scores for this current location for flood. But if we move it to the other side of the Gateway Boulevard, around 100 meters, you see both defended and defended flood depths. So why is that? Well, in SiteIQ, you have access to our entire hazard map library. We go to the flood layer. We can switch to California and then pick the hazard return period that we're worried about. And as you can see from this high resolution view, why flood wasn't a worry previously, but is at this new location. This is especially useful for buildings that have large footprints and we are worried about high resolution perils like flood or wildfire. Users are getting all those insights within seconds in a really intuitive manner. Finally, once we're happy with the information, you can export these details into a report, whether that's for the analyst to tell them to run a model on the location, or whether it's just for yourself to keep the assessment as part of your records. This is available by exporting a PDF or actually sending this data to a downstream system. So let's go back to the beginning and enter the detail of the location again. This time we're going to add more information. The scores you saw earlier didn't take into consideration the hazard, but also vulnerability components of the model. Entering in the primary characteristics will give you a more precise score than previously, where previously we didn't enter any of this information, it was treated as unknown. Entering TIVs gives you a new metric that we'll look at, and then entering deductibles, in this case for earthquake and buildings or windstorm, we'll see a new metric that truly differentiates this solution compared to the others on the market. First of all, you'll see that the new earthquake score is 8. Like other systems, this additional information has no bearing on things like hazard, but it does give you a new metric called loss costs, or AAL. Because we entered TIV, you see this as a dollar amount. And as we enter the deductible for earthquake, we see both the gross and the ground up premium, all within seconds. Our location details verify what we entered, but now you can update these details and see what bearing it has on the risk scores and the loss costs. So imagine changing this from 3 to 10 stories. We can see straight away that the score's gone from an 8 to a 9, and the loss costs have changed values. If we revert back, you can see what the original entered. So we looked at all the rich information from a single location lookup. But what about if you had tens or hundreds or thousands of locations you wanted to look up? What if you wanted to find outliers within an account? SiteIQ supports that too. So instead of clicking on a single location, let's click on import. Let's drag in a CSV that holds our schedules. Now we know you're never going to receive the data in a single format. So we built this simple mapping tool. It tells you what SiteIQ needs with its definitions and then asks you to map the columns in your spreadsheets that you want to upload. It will try to map the most obvious ones, but where it struggles, it will ask you to map them. On the right, it shows you some sample data from the actual spreadsheet. You can map the primary characteristics if you have them, and if you want to see the loss costs, you can simply map the TIVs accordingly. After you press finish, you can actually save these mappings. This way, if you want to receive the data in the same or similar format again, SiteIQ will do the mapping for you automatically. When we click import, you'll see around 200 locations within Florida being imported. But our import can support so much more, thousands, if not thousands, of locations. Let's click on View Import to see the results. On the right-hand side, we see them plotted on a map. The circle represents clusters of locations, and we can quickly drill in all the way to a single location. If you click on it, you'll get back to the single location view to see all the information that you're interested in. And if I go back, it takes me back to the table of locations I just imported. You can see every location we entered was had risk scores, hazard scores, and loss cost calculated for it. In this example, I want to see which location has the highest hurricane score. But if I'm interested in finding real outliers, I can apply a simple filter. Show me the locations that have a TIV greater than 8.9 million and is less than 1 mile from the coast. It's found me these 8 locations. I can click on each of the locations in the table or export results into a CSV. So every location imported is appended with every risk card. I can feed this into a downstream system or build an interesting report off the back of the CSV. Or more importantly, I can export this as an MRI format, a format which means my analyst can model these locations without having to manipulate the data. In the app, you often saw cards color-coded and the system recommending whether it should be accepted, referred, or declined. So how is that configured? Let's have a look. Let's enter our location again. This time, I want to point out a new label on the top of the screen. If you look at the top left-hand corner, you can see that the system is recommending that this location is declined. Why? In the settings menu, the admin has stated based on the number of red cards or amber cards that this location should be declined. But there's another way you can set whether a location should be declined or not. In the declined location section, it allows you to import a spreadsheet of locations. Now, they could represent zip codes where you have high aggregate or areas you just don't want to underwrite in. Or, in this case, it might be because an event has just taken place. In this example, let's imagine that the Ridgecrest earthquake had just occurred. We've uploaded a set of zip codes that we know have been impacted by this event. We can search on specific zip codes, and then we can add a description that will be shown to the user. So let's test this out. I've just copied and pasted a post office that would have been in the earthquake zone for this event. As you can see, no risk cards are shown. We could have configured it to show some risk cards, but what I wanted to point out is the description that you've entered. That explains to the underwriter why they shouldn't be writing this risk and why they should decline it. Now, using zip codes to understand if a location has been impacted by an event is pretty rudimentary. With SiteIQ, users can actually access all the event response footprints released by the RMS event response team. Users can choose to use the actual footprint or, more importantly, load their own to either recommend to underwriters a location should be declined, or it could be for purely informational purposes. This time, let's enter a location on the East Coast, one on Merritt Island in Florida. As you can see, it has a very high flood score. In fact, it has a high hurricane score too. SiteIQ has already suggested that it should be declined. So let's go back to the configuration menu to have a look. In the declined location section, let's not use zip codes, but let's use a shapefile from the event response team. Let's imagine Hurricane Dorian is bearing down at us. It's the 6th of September 2019, and the event response team has just released a new footprint, forecasting about where it's going to make landfall. Now, we want to warn our underwriters just in case they're about to write a location that falls within the forecasted path of this hurricane. Let's enter a comment and then tell them who they should speak to if they have any more questions. This time, let's enter the exact same location, but you should see a difference. Instead of seeing the risk cards, you're seeing the warning to the underwriters or the agent. Let's confirm that. Not only in SiteIQ can you overlay hazard information, but you can also access the event footprint. So let's overlay the forecast for Dorian. As we can see, not only the shapefile of the footprint, but also the bandings of the wind speed are given within SiteIQ. Now, I've used Dorian as an example. I'm pretty sure all your underwriters knew about that event that was about to take place. But can you say with confidence that they really know about every event taking place? Every event that might impact your portfolio? Well, functionality like this, in a few minutes using a really straightforward way, can help your underwriters avoid really costly mistakes. Hopefully you saw how SiteIQ provides you more than just hazard information. RMS science to give you more informed view of the risk. How it provided that in seconds in an intuitive and user-friendly application. How it could be customized to meet your risk appetite. So you're not just seeing a generic view of risk, but one that's tailored on your business strategy. Finally, how it relieves some of the pressure to your support staff. It allows users to self-serve, access rich information in seconds. Thank you.